Alrighty, Internet. It is I, Evan Benton of Dogg from Air, back after a long hiatus with a new video. And of course, this first video back is going to be explaining that very long hiatus. The reason for which was that we, my wife and I, were in the business of selling everything we own and moving to Mexico. So a month or so later, here we are in Mexico, and please welcome my wife, Dani Dogg, to the channel to talk about why we're here.
Hola, Internet.
Very nice. We are filming next to an open window because a lot of places in Mexico don't have glass, they just have bars. So we've got these cute mics. Hopefully the sound is okay. Hope you appreciate our constant investments in bringing you greater audio and video fidelity to the channel. And if you like what you see, if you like what you hear, please, please see if you can contribute to us in any small way. We'd really appreciate, and really help us to keep bringing you content on such topics as moving to Mexico and elsewhere. So, without further ado, then let me ask you, Dani, why would a red-blooded American pull up stakes and move south of the border?
Well, I'll tell you, Dogg. The biggest reason that we moved, I would say the only reason that we moved to Mexico from our homestead that we loved, is the New Orleans city mandates and the threat of the national mandates causing it so we were unable to continue to work.
Yeah, you pretty much lost your job there, huh?
Pretty much. Short aside here, as a reminder to myself, also to the viewer, that there are a couple words that we can't say in order for the video to not get automatically flagged by bots. So we're not going to say the V word or the C word, but we'll try to make it easy for you to understand what we're talking about. New Orleans, oddly, was one of the first cities to pass a citywide mandate for the V. A lot of people sort of downplay that as, oh, well, if you don't get the V, you can't go to a restaurant to eat. Oh, boo-hoo, that's so sad for you. But for us, that was pretty much the least of our concerns. We don't really go out to eat that much anyways. It effectively put a stop to my photography business. Their requirements specifically, which I don't really want to go into. I've made a lot of posts and done a lot of writing about how it's exponentially more difficult to walk inside a building in New Orleans than it is to fly to the country. The New Orleans mandates were significantly more strict than even the TSA and U.S. Customs requirements to get into the country. So for those of you that don't know, I'm a wedding photographer, which means that couples book me, oftentimes a year or more in advance. And we were given a 2-week notice or a 1-week notice, I can't remember now, for the New Orleans City V mandate before it went into effect, and leaving a lot of professional photographers scrambling and sort of figuring out what that's going to do to their business, not to mention the venues and everyone else that had to deal with it that didn't want to deal with it.
So they're not going to let you into the venue unless you have the little piece of paper that says you've been jabbed, right?
Correct. Or a
PCR test.
The other option was a full-blown PCR test. The difference with the New Orleans mandates and the U.S. Customs mandates is U.S. Customs allows you to use your test results for 3 calendar days, which is potentially up to 95 hours. The city of New Orleans only allows it for up to 72 hours. Also, U.S. Customs allows a 30-minute rapid test, while the city of New Orleans requires a full-on PCR test. And the turnaround times for PCR tests provided by the city is 3 to 4 days, which after the implementation of the mandate increased to 3 to 5 days, yet the results are only good for 72 hours. So there's a pretty good chance that I, as a photographer trying to follow the rules, would just simply not have test results in time. Therefore, I would not have a little piece of paper in hand, which would allow my entry into the wedding venue in order to perform my job.
You got basically your PCR test every day, right?
Yeah, if I was going to do 2 or more weddings a weekend, which is pretty typical, I would need to have as many tests because of the risk of the test results not coming back in time.
So if you got to shoot Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that means you got to not just get a test on Thursday, but you got to get a test.
I got to get a test as close to 72 hours prior to the event Friday, as close to 72 hours prior to the event Saturday and Sunday. So that would mean if I had a 3-wedding weekend, that would be 3 tests that week.
Yeah.
Not to mention the risk of the false positives of PCR tests, which are documented.
Right. And if someone is if someone's jabbed and they get sick, they could be spreading, all over the venue.
Yep.
So in other words, the testing requirement, basically, it's not going to prevent anybody from communicating any kind of illness, but it's going to make people really want to get the jabbies so that they can simply work. And of course, that's the whole point. It's not about health, it's about compliance. So
correct. And I personally know a handful of photographers who were not intending to get it, who did in order to continue running their business, because it's basically impossible to guarantee that you can still walk through a wedding venue's doors while meeting the overly strict requirements of testing.
And so the reason that we left then is not due to the event per se, the people. It's not due to the sickness, if I can use that word without getting censored. It was due to the government's response.
Completely, 100%.
And that's where we're at. And so a complicating factor that Dani has is a long battle with Lyme disease. So go ahead and get onto that.
Well, I've made a couple videos about it before. I know I should probably be doing more of that in case it's helpful to anyone. But basically, I have a lifetime of experience that does not lead to trust of the CDC, I guess is the nicest way to put it. So basically, it's because of the CDC saying that Lyme disease didn't exist in Oregon in 1991 and the doctors blindly following the CDC that I didn't receive the initial treatment, which allowed the Lyme spirochetes to get a really good grip on my body and causing the condition to be incredibly more difficult to treat. And currently the CDC says that Lyme disease symptoms that exist beyond the 2-week joke of a treatment that they say is how you treat Lyme disease doesn't exist. If you continue to have treatments after 2 weeks of one antibiotic, you have a magical mystery disease called post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, which has no known cause and no known cure. It's just untreated Lyme disease, but they don't admit that. So if I were to have followed the CDC guidance my entire life, I would still be bedridden or worse. There's links to late-stage Lyme disease and Alzheimer's, which my experience with the mental and cognitive issues with Lyme disease, I can definitely see the correlation. So I take what the CDC says very cautiously.
And throw it out the window. Yeah, and just to put this kind of picture in people's minds, we found a Lyme doctor, or I found a Lyme doctor. Dani was basically bedridden for most of our time in New Orleans. Maybe that's not quite accurate.
Most of our early time.
Yeah, well, we were there for 5 years, and you were probably bedridden for at least 2, maybe not consecutively, but you know. So we did find a good Lyme doctor online, and he was a great guy. But basically, everything that we did that worked for her was due to me going on not even the internet, but on Facebook Lyme groups, and finding things, and then learning about them, and then bringing them to him. So if you can imagine going to a medical doctor, not like a chiropractor or a naturopath or anything.
And this is a lifetime like Lyme doctor
who's had Lyme twice, and this is all he does is he treats Lyme. I go to him and I say, I read about this on Facebook. Can we try it? And he goes, yeah, okay. So
well, he'd usually heard of those treatments as well.
Yeah,
you
or
know,
he'd met the guy, like Stephen
Yeah.
Buhner. He'd met the guy, but he didn't. Anyway, I'm just put that picture in your mind. You know, yeah, okay, sure, we'll try that.
Well, even he said on our first appointment is that Lyme patients have to be their own doctors. You have to do your own research. You have to look into all this stuff. There is no like one cure available, and
Yeah, so you know, leaving aside the fact that the medical establishment has completely discredited itself to the point there where it's going to take decades to recover from this travesty that it has foisted upon the people of the world. You know, dealing with Lyme disease is enough. Okay, so when you have Lyme disease and you come into a situation like we're now facing, you know, of course you're not going to trust the CDC, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and another point I just want to make about that is just a basic point of practicing medicine is that you don't introduce a new variable into a patient. Okay. So when she's dealing with Lyme disease and treatment for Lyme disease, we wait to see how that treatment progresses before we introduce, say, an experimental magic potion. Okay, and I know that many doctors are just saying, "Oh, you're immunocompromised. Well, then you better be first in line for that, right?" Even I believe the FDA guidelines specify that immunocompromised patients, you know, should be first in line for this thing, and that's just bad medicine. You don't need to be a medical doctor to be able to understand that, right? It's driving a wedge between doctors and their patients, regardless of what side of the aisle you fall on. But that's the situation we find ourselves in, you know, Lyme patients or not. So yeah, here we are, Mexico again. Was this part of our plan?
No, not at all. When we bought our house, it wasn't a homestead yet. When we bought our house in the Lower Ninth Ward in 2016, we had plans. That was going to be our home base forever. We always wanted to travel and do things like that, but that was our place for us. And we spent 5 years putting in all the blood, sweat, and tears to make that blank slate of a backyard into a pretty awesome homestead.
Yeah, homestead, place to raise a family. And you live in a place, you change your plans based on what that place needs, right? You respond and react to the place, and that informs your decision-making process, and, you know.
Yeah. So everything we did for 5 years was not just, hey, let's plant something here. It's like, hey, well, if we plant something here, how is that going to affect everything? Where's the best placement of this for the future? And
so when we moved in, you know, I think I mentioned this in other videos, but every lot around us was vacant due to Katrina. We came up with a plan over time to buy the rest of those, and that would have been great. But unfortunately, they got bought up and turned into low-income housing. Most of them. So we ended up with, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 lots that are still vacant there. And so just to give you an idea of our decision-making process, back in May, we were talking to lenders. We had gone through we had gotten a loan to purchase the remaining lots, and we were talking to our realtor and getting him to contact those owners, who never responded for, I don't know, various reasons. But that's how quickly our minds change. Back in May, we were thinking we're gonna take on some extra debt to buy some more property right around us. And I am a doom and gloom kind of guy. I wasn't expecting to be able to flip it when the lower ninth ward got gentrified. I just wanted to live there, right, and shelter in place. So basically, we got to the point where we got approved. We found out we had all the money available. And we were just waiting to buy. We were just waiting to hear back from the owners of the lots, and now we just said screw it, move. And then it was August or so, or October, somewhere between August and October, when you lost. We found out you weren't going to be able to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then now it's early January. We're here in another country. And we wanted to talk a little bit our homestead that we left behind, because it was such a big part of the last 5 years of our lives. In fact, it led us to realize how much we love that lifestyle, and it's given us a plan basically for moving forward what we want to do, which is basically have a homestead somewhere with less prohibitive medical situation.
Did you ever think you would have a homestead?
No,
did you ever
Danny Dogg,
think
I
that
did
you
not.
would do everything that we did the last 5 years?
Nope. I mean, I like bees. Don't get me wrong. Always have.
I hated gardening. I hated yard work. If someone would have told me that I was going to spend, 5 years building a homestead and then be heartbroken when I had to sell it, that would be kind of hard to believe.
You did not know how much you would love chickens.
I did not know how much I would love chickens, particularly, but also gardening and everything about it, and bees. I really, really enjoyed the bees.
Biochar.
Making biochar, I never thought I would do that, and that became my job. I mean, to say that it's heartbreaking to leave, I don't feel encompasses what we're going through.
Yes. Stunning.
I wrote something for, we have a page, Benton Homestead, that I started to document our gardening and chickens and making all the pickles. And
Oh yeah, remember we started a pickle business too?
Yeah.
That was another thing we tried to do.
Yeah.
Well, successfully did, but
successfully did.
But I digress.
Cut short. So we have social media for Benton Homestead. We have a Facebook and an Instagram, and I debated a lot about what to do with that page since we don't live there anymore. That was about that homestead. It was about everything that we were doing there, and I decided to keep it during this transition period, and so now it is Benton Homestead Uprooted. And it's just going to follow our search for our next home. So whether it's Mexico or Japan, basically I've just been using it to share pictures of chickens in Mexico. But I made our first post the other day since leaving our homestead, and I would like to read that and show you the 10 photos that I felt encapsulated the beginning to end of our 5 years at that homestead, just as far as the land goes and everything that we did to the land. And so I'm going to show those over the screen, as well as some additional chicken and bee photos. As with many of you, 2021 did not lead us where we thought it would. We've been in Mexico for 1 month and all is well, but the new year has me thinking back to all that we had to leave behind in New Orleans. From the moment we moved to the lower Ninth Ward, we approached everything we did with the intention of that being our home base forever. Everything we built, repaired, improved, planted, and raised was done with love and thoughtful planning for the future. We poured ourselves into our home for 5 years, literal blood, sweat, and tears. We had never been gardeners before. I viewed gardening as yard work, which was not to be enjoyed. We learned how to do everything along the way, gaining confidence by reading books and watching how-to videos, almost always at Evan's encouragement. Naturally, we worked to improve the area around us also. I can't count how many discarded tires I rolled to our house almost weekly, then fought with the garbage company to get them collected, a service they begrudgingly provide. I couldn't estimate how many times I filled our 2 garbage cans twice a week with debris and litter from the neighborhood. We adopted a number of empty lots for regular weed whacking, unearthed a sidewalk that had been buried by 8-foot-tall weeds, and regularly pulled encroaching vines from neighbors' trees and fences. The soil had a strange habit of pushing long-buried pieces of broken glass to the surface from what we can only imagine were remnants of the previously hurricane-destroyed homes, so we went on glass patrol after every rain. All this despite the fact I was bedridden for months and quite ill for 3 years, fighting chronic Lyme disease that came out of remission from childhood. This left literally all the housework for Evan to manage single-handedly. It's hard to believe that 4 of our 5 years in this home were spent undergoing various treatments. I don't tell you this because I want some sort of credit or pat on the back, but rather to share how committed we were to our home and neighborhood. Please enjoy 10 photos that show our little homestead's progress over the 5 years we were blessed to be its caretaker. And that doesn't even touch on the hardest part for me, saying goodbye to our homestead and the lower Ninth Ward in New Orleans, is the chickens. Our flock that we raised, fortunately, very fortunately, I was able to find good homes for them. Really good homes. 10 of the ladies, the 8 youngest ladies and our 2 senior leghorns went to a friend of mine, and the 4 Jersey Giants went to a really nice homestead, both on the North Shore. So they're both about an hour from New Orleans. And my friend sends me regular videos and updates about the chickens, and she let me know when the Wyandottes started laying eggs, and they're doing really well. And they have 2 young girls to dote over them and continue taking notes about their pecking order and all of that. So I know they're in good hands, but rehoming animals is not something that I take lightly. And I'm gonna miss the bees for sure. They were fun, but I'm gonna miss the chickens forever. Yeah, so we had not planned to move to another country. We had always discussed, I'm sure, from watching the channel, that we hope to start a family. And so we had always discussed traveling extensively once we had kids, and potentially retiring in Japan, as Evan had lived there before and convincingly argues that it's a wonderful place to live and that I would like it there. And so we thought we would do traveling and potentially retire there. But after the 2020 happened and the lockdowns, and I would say fairly shortly after the lockdowns started, with our foresight of what was going to be coming and the inevitability of what was going to happen, which now has happened with the mandates, naturally I was thinking about, well, can we even raise kids here at this point now? So Japan at that point, I would say mid 2020 looked like a better option for raising children for two reasons. Well, more than two reasons, but uh, two health related reasons would be the lack of mandates for children that the country has had historically, and based on their pandemic response.
Allowing certain horse dewormers. So, again, why Mexico? Basically, because you can drive here.
Yeah, right now we're saying that we're going to settle down in either Mexico or Japan, whichever one we decide. So we're here in Mexico, we're checking out Mexico, and we're going to be contacting a Japanese immigration lawyer at some point soon to find out what our options are there. So why Mexico? One reason is that it is accessible by a car. On August 6th of 2021, there was a bill introduced into the House, H.R. 4980, which now has 3 co-sponsors. So there's a total of 4 Congress people who are in favor of this, and it has still only been introduced. It hasn't been discussed or passed on. It has to pass the House and then pass the Senate. But back in August of 2021, this was a possibility that was put on the table, that the bill states to direct the Secretary of Homeland Security to ensure that any individual traveling on a flight that departs from or arrives to an airport inside the United States or a territory of the United States is fully jabbed against C. So that would mean that there was, at that time, a very real possibility that we wouldn't even be able to fly out of the country. We would have to drive out of the country. So definitely not Canada. That pretty much only leaves Mexico or further south. And that is also the main reason that we chose to add some expenses to our trip in order to keep our car and driving to Mexico, which we'll talk a little more about in the next video.
And I'm also going to be making a series of videos looking at different countries that you might want to move to, because obviously this situation is not going to get any better in the States, and the expatriation is going to be a popular choice. So we're not going to spoil that. We're just going to be talking about our personal experiences here, and then we're going to make one more video talking about the logistics of that move. That is probably going to be helpful, because this is kind of just our experience, our personal experience, our personal reasons. And so the next video in this 2-part series is going to be how exactly we moved. So is there any stuff you want to talk about for the end of this one? Nope.
No, everything else will be covered in the next video.
All right, everything else will be covered in the next video, you guys. So hope you enjoyed that one. Hope you enjoyed my lovely wife's commentary on this stuff. And since I've got a lot more time on my hands, I'm going to be making a lot more videos. I'm going to try and turn this into an income stream for us. I've got some other, irons in the fire that way too. But you can look forward to a lot more Dogg for Mayor content, as well as Dani Dogg here. Please tune into that and see if you can support us in any way. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't. Subscribe on Rumble, where we're going to be able to put out some less censored material. Share and comment if you got any questions or anything, especially on the subject of moving to Mexico, that we can help you out. We would love to. But at any rate, this has been Evan Benton and
Dani Benton.
Sure. Dogg for Mayor. Thank you and good night.